They locked me inside the dog cage, laughing like kids playing a cruel prank. She's no different from the strays, my daughter-in-law Sarah chuckled, jingling the keys in her hand before snapping the latch shut with a sharp metallic click. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I lowered myself slowly onto the damp mat, pressing my back against the cold wire wall, and let the smell of rust, fur, and old urine settle over me like a blanket. At 76, I'd lived through harder things than a night in a cage. But nothing had ever humiliated me quite like this. It all began that morning when I showed up at the shelter without warning. My shelter. The one Frank and I had built from nothing but sweat and heart. I used to scrub those floors myself, spoon-feed the sick ones, give every dog a name, and remember who loved chicken more than beef. We never called them strays. To us they were residents, souls, survivors. I hadn't stepped inside in 6 months. After Frank passed, I handed over the daily operations to my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah. It was supposed to be temporary. You've earned a rest, Mom, Michael told me. Let us take it from here. I believed him. I shouldn't have. At first they called to keep me updated. Then the updates stopped. Then the calls. Whenever I asked to visit, there was always an excuse. Remodeling. Staff meetings. Flea treatment day. Not a good time. But something in me broke through their walls that morning. I walked straight through the front door. The teenage receptionist barely looked up. They're not here, she mumbled. But I heard voices in the back, and I knew Michael's laugh anywhere. I slipped past her desk, my shoes quiet on the vinyl floor. The bright murals I once painted on the walls, kids, pets, flowers, were now buried under lifeless beige. I peeked into one kennel. No blankets. 2 dogs curled together, shivering. The air reeked of bleach and mildew. Mom! Michael's voice barked behind me, as if I were an intruder. I turned slowly. What's going on here? He sighed, rubbing his forehead. You can't just walk in. This is not a good time. I can see that, I said flatly. Sarah appeared at his side, arms folded. You're overreacting. We're cutting costs. Blankets get destroyed, dogs chew them. It's safer this way. Safer for who? I shot back. She rolled her eyes. We've been running this place just fine without your interference. The word stung. Interference. Michael stepped closer, using that soft, careful voice he'd mastered as a boy whenever he broke something. Mom, we've got this. You raised me to be responsible. Trust us. I glanced around again. The half-stocked pantry, flies circling the water bowls, the broken light in the ceiling. I'm not leaving, I told them. They didn't yell or threaten. They just smiled at me like I was some foolish old woman poking around where I didn't belong. Fine, Sarah said sweetly. Stay. But if you want to hang around the dogs, you have to follow safety protocols. She led me down the row of kennels to a large empty cage, usually reserved for sick or injured dogs in isolation. I stepped inside, still trying to believe this was their idea of a joke. Wait here, she said. Michael and I have paperwork to finish. Then we'll talk. The door slammed shut. I heard the lock turn. They walked away laughing. Then the lights went out. The dogs barked for a while, then one by one fell quiet. I pulled my knees to my chest and felt the ache sink deep into my bones. They never came back. Maybe it was a test, I thought. Maybe they wanted me to feel what the dogs feel. So they succeeded. The concrete floor bled through my skirt. The cold crept up my spine. Somewhere close by a dog whimpered. I whispered back, I'm here. I didn't sleep. Not really. I dozed, leaning against the wire, drifting in and out, thinking of Frank. He was a gentle man, but when it came to injustice, he carried fire. Martha, he used to say, don't ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. You decide that yourself. At some point I must have closed my eyes because suddenly there was light, the sound of keys, the shuffle of sneakers. Mrs. H. It was Lily, the janitor. Barely 20. The only one there who ever looked me in the eye. Her face went white. What the hell? Sorry, what are you doing in there? They locked me in, I said calmly, pushing myself to my feet. Would you mind opening the door? She hesitated only a second, then turned the key. I stepped out stiffly, my joints screaming, my hair a mess, my mouth dry. But my back was straight. You want me to call the police? She asked. No, I said, brushing off my skirt. But I need a phone. I've got a few calls to make. By 9 I'd spoken to my lawyer. By 10 to my financial advisor. By 11 I had the keys to Frank's old office downtown. And at noon a board meeting was scheduled. Michael and Sarah still had no idea what was coming. That morning I took the longest shower of my life, scrubbing away the stink of urine, bleach, and shame. The water ran red against my skin, but I still didn't feel clean. It wasn't the dirt. It was what they had done. My own son, the boy I nursed through fevers, carried home in the rain when his shoes fell apart, had locked me in a cage and laughed. I didn't cry. I haven't cried in years, not since Frank passed. But inside me something hardened. Not anger. Not grief. A cold, steady clarity. I wrapped myself in a towel and sat at the kitchen table, pulling out the drawer I hadn't touched in years. Old files. Bank statements. Tax returns. Frank's will. I had trusted too much. Trust, I realized, is a dangerous luxury. There it was. The deed to the shelter signed in both our names. The nonprofit papers we filed 12 years ago. And one document I'd nearly forgotten. A durable power of attorney Frank and I had drafted after his first heart scare. My name sat there clear and firm. Michael's name wasn't anywhere. They thought I had handed it all over. They never even checked. They built their throne on assumptions. I poured myself coffee and called Mr. Carter, our old attorney. I hadn't heard his voice since Frank's funeral. Still steady, still kind. Martha, he said, what can I do for you? I told him everything. The cage. The lies. The slow, steady push they'd been giving me toward the door. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. When I finished, he said, I'll be there in an hour. While I waited, I went through the financials. Michael had set up a new operating account for the shelter. At the time, I hadn't asked questions. But I still had access to the original ones. And more importantly, I still had my money. There was one account they didn't know about. A savings account Frank and I had opened after selling our second property. It was meant for travel we never took. I'd left it untouched for years. It still held $138,000. Enough to make a statement. Mr. Carter showed up exactly when he said he would, blazer sharp, leather briefcase in hand. You kept everything in good order, he said, scanning the papers. This is more than enough. How fast can we act? I asked. Immediately. He made the calls while I watched the clock tick toward noon. At every stop, the Secretary of State, the county records, the bank, the answer was the same. I still held control. Legally, the shelter was mine. By 2 I called Lily. Sweetheart, you okay after this morning? I'm so sorry, Mrs. H., she stammered. I didn't know what to do. I mean, it looked like. I'm not angry, I said gently. But I do need your help again. Anything. Meet me at the shelter in the morning. Bring yourself. Maybe a camera too. By sunset, everything was in motion. Carter filed a motion for immediate board review. The bank froze Michael's new account. And in my hand were the keys to Frank's old office. That evening I walked into the dusty room, pulling sheets off the furniture, uncovering Frank's desk with its coffee-stained corner. I stacked my files neatly, sat down, and breathed. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about dignity, about taking back what mattered. They thought they could lock me in a cage like I was nothing. But I built that place. And tomorrow I'd take it back. The house was too quiet that night. A silence that scraped. Frank's chair still dented from his back. I sat with a cup of tea untouched. A bruise circled my arm where the metal pressed against me all night. I traced it with my fingers, not in pain but as a reminder. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not Doris next door. Not Carol from church, who always seemed to know when something was wrong. Some truths don't get spoken yet. Some truths wait for action. At dawn I made coffee. Strong the way Frank liked it. Put on my navy cardigan. Packed files, spare keys, pens. And at 6:45, I locked my door and drove to the shelter. The lot was quiet. Lily was already waiting by the side entrance, clutching a folder. You're early, I said. Didn't sleep, she admitted. We nodded and walked in together. The air smelled of bleach and damp cement. The dogs stirred, tails wagging weakly. An old shepherd mix barked once. I knelt and whispered, We're fixing this. Inside Frank's old office, now turned to storage, we cleared the boxes. Lily pulled up the security feed. The footage was all there. Me inside the cage. Michael shutting the door. Sarah locking it. Both of them laughing. "That's more than enough," Lily said quietly. "You sure you want to do this?" I looked at Sarah's frozen face on the screen. "I'm not doing this to punish them," I said. "I'm doing this to protect what we built." At 8:07 the front door opened. Their voices carried down the hall. "Dog food shipments late again. Just threatened to cancel. That'll light a fire under them." I stepped out into the hallway as they turned the corner. Michael spotted me first. His smile froze. "Mom." Sarah frowned. "What are you doing here?" I straightened my back. "I'm here because I never left," I said. "You just forgot whose name is still on the deed." Michael and Sarah exchanged a quick glance. "What are you talking about?" Michael asked, his voice straining to sound calm. "You'll find out in about 5 minutes, I told him. "The board review is this morning. Mr. Carter will be joining us. Until then, you are not to touch a single document, log into a single system, or speak to a single employee. Is that clear?" Sarah scoffed. "You can't just walk in here." "And yet I have." I cut her off. "The shelter is under emergency review for mismanagement, financial fraud, and abuse of authority." Michael stepped forward, his face tightening. "This is insane." I raised my hand. "I spent the night in a dog cage. You put me there. You shut off the lights. You laughed. And you walked away." His jaw tightened. "I'm not insane," I told him. "I'm awake." He started to speak, but Lily stepped out from the office, laptop open in her hands. "We have footage." Sarah's face flushed red. Michael froze. "I suggest you find a good lawyer," I told them, then turned my back and walked into the office. The clock struck 8:15. Board members began to file in. Folding chairs were set up, a coffee pot borrowed from the staff lounge, and a stack of neatly labeled manila folders. Lily's handwriting on each tab. They came one by one, retirees like me, a couple of younger folks, 2 former vets, one woman who'd volunteered here for over 20 years. People who remembered what this shelter once was. Most hadn't been called to a meeting in years. Michael had kept everything filtered through email, if at all. But now they showed up. Every one of them. Because I asked. I stood by Frank's old desk and nodded to each as they entered. "Thank you for coming," I said, and I meant it. When the door clicked shut, Mr. Carter cleared his throat. "Let's begin." Michael and Sarah sat at the far end, silent. Michael's face stiff, unreadable. Sarah kept glancing at her phone like she was waiting for a lifeline. Mr. Carter started with the footage. We didn't play the sound, didn't need to. The images were enough. Me guided into the cage. The lock snapping. The lights going out. Michael's back as he walked away. The room stirred. Not outrage, at least not yet. But the air shifted with the weight of the truth. When it ended, Mr. Carter laid the papers out. "Here is the original deed. Here are the nonprofit bylaws. Here is the power of attorney. You'll note that nothing has been legally amended. No vote. No sign transfer. No board consultation." Someone at the back muttered, "Not even an email." I stepped forward, folding my hands. For months I've been told to stay out, that it wasn't my place anymore, that they knew better. But I'm not here because I want to run everything again. I'm here because we built this place with our hands. Because animals who cannot speak need advocates. Because no one, not even family, has the right to erase someone while they're still alive. A few heads nodded. "I trusted them," I said softly. "That was my mistake. But I'm correcting it now." Lily began passing out folders, expenses, purchase orders, vendor contracts. Mr. Carter walked the board through the numbers. Inflated costs, missing invoices, consulting fees that didn't exist. None of it criminal on the surface, but every line wrong. I didn't look at Michael. I didn't have to. His silence was louder than anything he could say. When the vote was called, it wasn't close. 12 in favor of emergency removal. 1 abstained, claiming he didn't like drama. The rest voted to reinstate me as acting director. Effective immediately. Michael finally stood. "This is ridiculous. You think she can run this place? She hasn't been involved in years." I haven't been allowed to be involved, I corrected him. You're not thinking long-term, he snapped. This place needs modern systems, scalable growth. This place needs blankets, Lily cut in firmly. And working light bulbs. And food that's not expired. Sarah jumped in, her voice high and sharp. You don't know what you're doing. You're emotional. You're just doing this to punish us. I looked at her calmly. No, Sarah. If I wanted to punish you, I'd let you keep going until the IRS found you. Her mouth opened, then closed. Mr. Carter handed them each a sealed envelope. Here are your notices. Your access is revoked. Any attempt to return without board approval will be considered trespassing. And just like that, it was done. They left the room small, silent, without fight. The rest of us stayed. We made lists. We divided tasks. Lily dragged out a whiteboard that had been collecting dust. One woman offered to call the old volunteers. Another started cataloging donations. I walked the kennels again at noon. The dogs seemed more alert now, as if they could sense the shift. One little mutt with crooked ears pressed his nose against the bars. I knelt, hand out. He sniffed, then licked my palm once. Hello, sweetheart, I whispered. By evening I was back home. The bruise on my arm had darkened, the sun sagged low. I made soup, lit an unscented candle, poured a glass of wine from the bottle Frank had once saved for birthdays. The phone rang twice. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Let them wonder. Let them taste silence for once. I stepped onto the porch and listened to the cicadas. The street was quiet except for the faint sound of a neighbor's TV. I stood there a long time, letting the night wrap around me. Tomorrow would be busy. But tonight I was just a woman in her chair, in her home, finally breathing. I didn't sleep. Not really. I doubt anyone could on that cold concrete floor. The mat had been thin, the metal beneath it soaking in every bit of damp. My back had ached within the hour, my hips not long after. But it wasn't pain that kept me awake. It was silence. Not peaceful silence, the silence of being forgotten. The shelter after hours was another world. No volunteers. No phones. No footsteps. Just the shuffle of paws or a restless whimper. Some dogs dreamed. One scratched at his kennel wall, crying out. I whispered to him. I didn't know his name, Michael and Sarah had changed the tags, but I'd known hundreds of dogs and fear always sounds the same. It's okay, baby, I murmured. I'm here. He settled. I leaned against the wire wall, my coat too thin, no bag allowed inside. Maybe it started as a joke. Maybe they wanted to teach me a lesson. Maybe it was just cruelty that went too far. Whatever it was, they never came back. At some point I started talking softly to myself just to hear a voice, to remind myself I was still real. I spoke to Frank. Well, here we are, I told him. Back in the shelter. Not the way we imagined it. I told him everything. The blankets removed, food orders shrinking, donations mismanaged. The look on Lily's face when she found me. I told him about the documents, how I was going to fix it, take it back. But before all that, I admitted the truth. I should have trusted my gut months ago. The signs had been there. Sarah's clipped tone. Michael's insistence I not worry. The way he laughed when I asked about the heating system. Volunteers quietly disappearing. Names erased. They hadn't taken the shelter from me in one move. They took it inch by inch. And I let them. In that cage, surrounded by sleeping animals, I thought about all the ways we give ourselves away. Silencing our doubts for love. Swallowing disrespect for peace. Convincing ourselves we matter only in the ways others allow. Frank would have been furious, but not surprised. He always said I was too patient for my own good. By 4 a.m. I curled on my side, knees to my chest, hands stiff from the cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even hope they'd return. What I felt wasn't desperation. It was decision. When the morning light filtered through the small windows, I had made up my mind. No more waiting. No more asking. No more pretending. They locked me in that cage thinking I was harmless. They forgot who built the place. When Lily came fumbling with the keys, whispering, "Oh my God," over and over, I stood up without help. My legs shook, but I stood. I walked out without asking where Michael and Sarah were. I didn't need excuses. What they had said was louder than any apology. She's no different from strays. That's what they said. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was a stray. But strays aren't broken. Strays survive. Strays find their way home. And sometimes strays bite back. That morning, while they still slept in warm beds, I drove home with stiff hands and a full heart. Not broken, stronger. I had something better than comfort. I had resolve. By 7 a.m. I was dressed, hair pulled tight, shoes polished. The kitchen smelled of coffee and buttered toast I couldn't eat. My coat hung on the chair, waiting. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Carter. He answered on the second ring. "Martha," he said. "How bad was it?" "Worse than I thought," I told him. "But not bad enough to break me." "I didn't think it would be," he replied, wide awake. "I need you at the shelter," I said. 9 sharp. Bring everything. I'll be there. I moved through my house like I used to before inspections, intentional, focused. I gathered incorporation papers, tax filings, zoning agreements. Polished the brass key to the front gate. By 8, I was at Frank's old office downtown. The building sagged a little, but it stood. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old files of honest work. I opened the blinds, sunlight spilling across the desk. Lined up documents, pens turned on the old desktop. Lily was at the shelter keeping watch. I asked her not to warn Michael and Sarah. Let them walk into the storm blind. At 8:57, Mr. Carter knocked. Same crisp suit, same leather briefcase. He spread the papers across the desk. "You still hold controlling interest," he said. "No vote was ever taken to change that. Here's the durable power of attorney. Never revoked. And this is the bylaws clause on misuse of authority. We're invoking it today." "I don't want to fight," I said. "But I won't let them stay." "It won't be a fight," he told me. "Not if you walk in like you still own the place." "I do," I answered simply. He smiled. We drove separately to the shelter. As I pulled into the lot, I saw Lily waiting by the side door. She gave me a respectful nod. Michael's truck was already there. Sarah's car too. Good. Inside, the air reeked of stale coffee and cheap air freshener. The old murals were gone, replaced with laminated slogans. Efficiency is compassion. Optimize every pause step. Empty words like a sales pitch. I walked the hall with Mr. Carter at my side. Lily opened the staff door and we stepped inside. Michael stood at the central desk, tapping on his tablet. He froze when he saw me. "Mom," he started. I said nothing. Just handed him the order. "What is this?" he asked, eyes darting over the page. Sarah appeared, pulling on her coat. "You can't be serious." "You're hereby suspended from all duties," Mr. Carter said evenly. "Effective immediately. Pending full board review." "You don't have the authority." Michael snapped. "I do," I said calm. "And I'm exercising it." They looked between the three of us. "You locked me in a cage," I said. "Left me overnight like an abandoned dog. And you stole what wasn't yours." Michael's face went pale. "You called me a stray," I added. "You were right. I was. But stray doesn't mean broken. It means no one's claimed you yet." Lily stepped forward, handing me a worn binder. The original intake logs, shift schedules, Frank's notes scribbled in the margins. I ran my hand across the cover like it was sacred. Because it was. "I'm claiming this place again," I said. "Effective now." Sarah threw her hands up. "You're being emotional." "Yes," I said. "Because this place was built on emotion. On love. On dignity. Not greed." Mr. Carter slid the formal notice onto the desk. "You have until the end of the day to collect your personal belongings. After that, your codes will be revoked." They didn't argue. Not anymore. I didn't want their apology. I didn't need it. Instead, I turned to the kennels. Dogs lined the runs, some barking, some quiet, but all of their eyes followed me as I walked past. Recognition even after all this time. One older terrier, scrappy as ever, barked once, sharp and short. I knelt by her gate. "We're back, sweetheart," I whispered. "We're home." And I meant it. The office smelled of old wood and lavender cleaner. Frank hated that scent. Said it reminded him of his mother's parlor, the room no one was ever allowed to sit in. I used it anyway. Not out of spite, but because it lingered like memory. I sat behind his desk for the first time in years, sun warming my shoulders through the window. Lily had brought in a thermos of coffee and a sandwich I didn't touch. The old binder lay open beside me, the computer humming softly. For the first time in ages, the place felt like mine again, not because of the keys in my hand but because I remembered why we built it. A 9 a.m. sharp, I called the bank. My voice steady as I gave my name, my details, and asked for access to the account Frank and I had opened 15 years ago. The woman on the line hesitated. "Ma'am, do you know this account hasn't been touched in?" "I'm aware," I said. "It's time." Her keyboard clattered. "You still have full control. The last activity was a deposit in 2013. Would you like the balance?" "Yes, please." She read the number. I wrote it slowly, pressing each figure into the paper. 138,711.54. "Would you like a withdrawal?" she asked. "No. I'd like to transfer $25,000 into a new account under the shelter's original nonprofit registration. I'll come by in person to sign." "Understood, Mrs. Hale." When I hung up, I sat still, staring at the total. Frank would have smiled. He never trusted the market, never liked risks. That money had sat quiet all these years, earning interest while we lived our lives. I'd almost forgotten it. Now it would buy us a restart. I called Lily next. "We've got seed money," I said. "We can restock supplies, hire back 2 of the old staff part-time, and fix the heating in the East Wing." She laughed. "You move fast, Mrs. H. I've been still for too long." That afternoon I drove to the bank branch, the same one where Frank and I signed our first business loan back in the 80s. The manager was new, young, probably born after we opened our first dog run. But he was respectful, efficient. He didn't blink when I told him I wanted every shelter account separated from Michael's reach. "Would you like to add any new signatories?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "That kind of trust has to be earned." The paperwork took an hour. By the time I left, I had 3 folders in my bag and a new debit card in my wallet. My name on everything. No more middlemen. I stopped at the hardware store for a padlock for the supply shed. Then at the wholesaler. Then at the pet bakery that used to donate treats before Michael streamlined the donor list. At each stop I reintroduced myself. "Martha Hale. I'm back." No one asked questions. They just smiled or hugged me or slipped me their cards. One woman even teared up. "You remembered our birthday drive in 2009, she said. "I still have that photo of you and Frank with the Labradoodle in a party hat." That night, I came home bone-tired but sharper than I'd felt in years. My hips ached, my legs stiff, but my mind buzzed. I heated soup, poured tea, and sat with a notepad. I made a list. New food supplier. Call Joanne about volunteer schedule. Ask Lily to draft social media. Reach out to Charlotte, she used to run our Facebook page. Staff uniforms, get quotes. Veterinary contracts, schedule consult. At the bottom I wrote rebuild but better. I didn't want the shelter as it used to be. I wanted it as it should have been all along, open, honest, kind. Not just a place for animals but for people who'd been cast aside. For strays of every kind. On my way to bed I passed Frank's photo. The 2 of us on the porch of the original building, a puppy in my lap, his hand on my shoulder. "Turns out," I murmured, "you were right to save that money." The picture didn't answer but I felt steadier. Tomorrow would be busy. The work had just begun. But I felt like the woman who once built something out of nothing. Ready to build again. I'd always signed my name with a looped M and a sharp tail on the E. Frank used to tease me for it. Said it looked like a schoolteacher's signature. I liked how it sat on the page, clear, confident, mine. That's why I noticed it right away when Mr. Carter laid a file in front of me. "This is the transfer form they submitted to the city," he said. "Filed 6 months ago. You're listed as outgoing director." I leaned in, adjusted my glasses. The signature at the bottom, my name in blue ink, looked like mine at a glance. But the loop was wrong. The tail wasn't sharp. The rhythm was off. "That's not mine," I said. "I didn't think so." He slid over another page. "Here's your real signature from the 2015 zoning renewal." Side by side it was obvious. The forgery wasn't even good. Practiced maybe but not lived in. "They forged it," I said quietly. "To gain full control," he nodded. We'll prepare a formal challenge. The board already gave you operational authority, but this is criminal. Betrayal doesn't always sting fast. Sometimes it seeps in slow like a damp blanket. I thought of every excuse I'd made for Michael. Every time I told myself he was tired, overwhelmed, trying his best. But he'd signed my name. Faked me out of my own life. I want it revoked, I said. Publicly. Loudly. Mr. Carter's smile was grim. It will be. And it'll bar them from future involvement. We were in Frank's old office again. The one with the creaky floor and faint coffee smell in the walls. Sun streamed through the blinds, warming the edge of the desk where Frank once rested his arm. A knock. Lily stepped in. They're back, she said. Who? Michael and Sarah. Pulled in 5 minutes ago. Haven't come in. Just sitting in the car. I stood slowly. Let's say hello. We walked outside into crisp autumn air. The breeze carried the scent of leaves and chimney smoke. Michael's truck sat crooked near the fence. Sarah sat stiff in the passenger seat, arms crossed. Michael climbed out, tried a smile. Hi, Mom. I said nothing. He glanced at Mr. Carter, then back at me. Look, I know we didn't part well. You forged my name. His smile collapsed. I've seen the documents, I said. You faked my signature. That's fraud. His face flushed. It wasn't like that. We needed to move quickly. You weren't responding and we thought. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I'd go quietly. You thought you could build something on my bones. Sarah got out, heels clacking. You're making this bigger than it is. You're acting like you're in court. You're not in court, Mr. Carter said evenly. Yet. She rolled her eyes. This is petty. I stepped forward. You locked me in a cage. We didn't. You did. The wind pulled at her coat. I don't want you near the shelter again, I said. I don't want your names on anything we print. I don't want your hands on anything we built. Michael looked at me, then at Lily, then at Mr. Carter. You're choosing strangers over your son. I'm choosing right over wrong, I said. I should have done it long ago. They didn't argue. They climbed into the truck and drove off. I watched the dust trail behind them until they were gone. Lily stood beside me. Want to sit down? No, I said. I want to get back to work. And we did. That afternoon, we began restoring nonprofit status with the city. We refiled under my name, sent notices to volunteers who'd been shoved out, posted a quiet but firm update on the website. Under new old leadership. Shelter reopening next week. Charlotte, our volunteer coordinator, managed the inbox. It's been full since noon, she said. People are coming back. They want to help. By sundown, food shipments were on their way. Vet partnerships reinstated. A plan in motion to bring in college students for weekend cleanup shifts. I stayed late. The halls were quiet but not like before. This silence was work, not neglect. I walked the kennels one last time. Dogs wagged tails, pressed noses to bars. One barked once, then sat watching me. You'll be okay now, I told him softly. We all will. That night, when I locked up, I didn't use the back door. I walked out the front, under the sign where my name had always belonged. They were already inside when I arrived the next morning. Michael stood stiff near the desk. Sarah sat scrolling her phone like it could save her. They looked like guests overstaying their welcome. But the lobby was different now. Freshly cleaned, walls repainted, smelling of citrus and resolve. The old welcome home sign hung above the door again. We hadn't announced anything, but word spread. Volunteers came early. So did the board. And Janelle, the city liaison, sharp, clipboard in hand, approval stamped and ready. Mr. Carter stood beside me. Ready. I've been ready since the moment they shut that cage, I said. At 9:01 we walked in together. Heads turned. Michael straightened. Mom, what is this? Some kind of show? No, I said. This is a return. Sarah rose slowly, forcing a smile. You didn't say there'd be guests. I didn't need to. Janelle stepped forward. Michael Hale? He nodded. You've been notified your authority here is revoked. You were given until yesterday to remove belongings and turn over materials. I didn't agree to that. You didn't have to, Mr. Carter said. The board voted. The city approved reinstating original leadership under Mrs. Hale. Sarah's voice rose shrill. You can't erase us. We did everything for this place. You did everything to this place, Lily said from the doorway. There's a difference. Michael stepped toward me. This is still my home. No, I said, meeting his eyes. It never was. You moved in to save money. You used it as a stepping stone. You never fed the dogs. Never cleaned a cage. Never stayed past 6. You sat behind a desk and signed for food you never ordered. Supplies you never unpacked. He opened his mouth, but I went on. You cut volunteers. Reduced feeding. Pulled heaters off the walls and called it renovation. You forged my name. And you locked me in a cage. The room was still. I've filed fraud charges, I added. But you're not here for that. You're here to hear this in front of everyone. I turned to the board, the staff, the volunteers. Faces I hadn't seen in years. Familiar hands. Familiar eyes. This place was never about money. It was about rescue. About dignity for the animals and for the people who walked in carrying guilt, fear, or hope. We took strays of every kind and gave them a reason to stand tall. I looked back at Michael and Sarah. You're not part of that anymore. Mr. Carter handed them envelopes. Formal notices of removal and trespass restriction. You may not enter or represent the shelter in any form moving forward. Sarah grabbed her coat with a scoff. Fine. Think this place is worth saving? It'll bleed you dry. I built it once, I said. I can build again. Michael didn't look at me as he left, just hunched his shoulders the way he used to when he got caught lying about skipping school. When the door shut behind them, the room exhaled. Not applause, not noise, but real relief. Lily appeared with a tray of mismatched mugs and hot coffee. Janelle signed the final form and handed it to me. You're officially reinstated, Mrs. Hale. Thank you, I said. Charlotte held up her phone. Do we post now? Not yet, I told her. Give it a day. Afterward, I walked the halls alone. Every step stirred a memory. The storage closet with the squeaky hinge. The medical room where I once sat for hours with a dog in my lap, waiting for the vet. The bulletin board where Frank pinned every thank you note was still there. I stood in the middle of the kennel room. The dogs stirring, some wagging, some watching. A young mutt with patchy fur barked once, then cocked his head at me. I'm back, I told him. And I'm not leaving again. Behind me, someone flipped on the lights. Warmth filled the space. Home. Not just for them, but for me too. At last. The first thing I did was tear up the new policies. Michael and Sarah had turned everything into numbers. How many ounces of food per dog? How many minutes to clean a kennel? How many seconds a volunteer could linger? There was even a laminated sign near the office door that read, Time is resources. Don't waste either. I ripped it down and tossed it in the trash. Time isn't a resource in a place like this. It's the whole point. You sit with a shaking dog for 20 minutes because he's never known a gentle touch. You mop the same floor twice because an old beagle's joints ache and she needs the warmth. You linger because sometimes silence and presence are the only gifts you can give. By noon, the shelter smelled different. Not just bleach and pine cleaner, but people. Motion. Lily had opened the windows. Charlotte brought muffins from the bakery down the block. Janelle dropped off a box of stamped city papers and a spare thermos of coffee. And the volunteers came. Old ones mostly. Joan, who stitched dog beds by hand. Mira, who once fostered 2 seniors for a week and never returned them. Even Gus, the retired plumber with bad knees, showed up asking if the sink in the back still leaked. It did. I didn't give speeches. Didn't make announcements. I just handed out gloves, towels, checklists. Thank you for coming back, I said. They already knew what to do. Charlotte posted a simple update on our page. We're open. Come home. Underneath, she added a photo of Midge, paws up on the kennel gate, head tilted like she was posing. By evening, the post had hundreds of comments. Missed you. So glad you're back. Volunteering this weekend, where do I sign up? We never had a marketing budget. We didn't need one. The community remembered. That afternoon, I sat at Frank's old desk with a mountain of files, contracts, medical forms, adoption follow-ups. A mess. Invoices paid twice. Others unpaid. Vet appointments canceled. One sheet had behavioral risk, Put down scrawled beside a dog I remembered as shy but sweet. I drew a line through it and wrote, "Review with staff." If Sarah had stayed, I don't doubt that dog would have disappeared one weekend. Not anymore. We reinstated full medical checks for all new arrivals. Reconnected with the city vet program. Called every volunteer from the old roster. Lily took over training. She was calm, firm, kind. She remembered details. This dog hates being loomed over, crouched down first. That one only takes treats from the left hand. Watching her move through the kennels reminded me of myself 20 years ago. She didn't rush. She saw them. I stayed late again. The place still needed work. Cracked tiles, sluggish ceiling fans, a sagging fence out back, but it was alive. I walked the rows as the dogs settled for the night. Some curled in corners. Some dozed half watching. Some wagged even as they drifted. I paused outside the cage they'd locked me in. Empty now. Clean. Lily wanted to tear it out. I told her to wait. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I needed to decide. Pain teaches you, but you don't always need the monument. Maybe one day it'd be a medical room again. Or a quiet place for new arrivals. But never again what they used it for. I shut off the lights and left through the front. The evening sky was soft, the lot empty except for my old sedan. I stood there breathing. The shelter wasn't healed. Not yet. But it was breathing. And so was I. The bell above the front door chimed at 10:03 the next morning. The same brass bell Frank hung back in 91 because he liked how the dogs perked up. Said a shelter should never feel like a warehouse. I looked up from intake forms. A woman stood in the doorway, coat zipped high, hands tucked into her sleeves. Early 40s, eyes a little nervous. Beside her, a girl no older than 7 clutched a faded pink backpack. "We saw the sign," the woman said softly. "Online." "Come in," I nodded. "You're the first today." They stepped inside. The girl unzipped her coat, then froze at a bark down the hall. Not loud, just one sound. Curious. "She's okay," I told her. "They all are." The woman hesitated. "We lost our old boy a few months back. We weren't going to get another." She glanced down at her daughter, already drawn to the photo board. "But she wanted to visit." "You don't have to decide today," I said. "I know." But I saw it in her eyes, scanning the place not just for dogs but for safety, for kindness. You can always tell when someone walks embracing to be sold something. We didn't sell here. I asked Lily to walk them through. Not push, just guide. I stayed in the office watching through the glass. The girl pointed at each dog wide-eyed. At one point she crouched by Midge's kennel. Midge barked once, then sat tail-tapping. The girl tapped back. They were gone 40 minutes. When they returned, the girl clutched a manila folder. Her name Emma, written in Lily's careful script. "I like Midge," she said shyly. "Midge likes you too," I told her. Her mother smiled. Small but warm. The kind of smile that says maybe we'll be okay. They didn't take her home that day. Still a home check, paperwork, food to buy. But they promised to come back Saturday. At the door Emma turned. She remembered me. "She will tomorrow too," I said. After they left, I sat in Frank's old adoption chair. It creaked. The cushion was worn, but I left it. That chair had held dozens of stories. The moment someone met the dog who would carry them through heartbreak, or help their child sleep, or give an aging parent something to hold on to. The day rolled steady: volunteers, deliveries, forms, vet visits. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. Just life. That night I stopped by Midge's kennel. She stood tail wagging. "She's coming back," I whispered. Midge barked once. I scratched behind her ears. "She picked you. Lucky girl." What I didn't say, she reminded me of me. Of all of us. Midge with her graying fur and crooked legs. The kind of dog people overlook. Not flashy. Not young. Just waiting. But when someone really saw her, she lit up like a match in a dark room. That night I walked home instead of driving. Just to feel the gravel under my shoes. Just to look up at the stars. The shelter was back. The world, for the first time in years, felt exactly the size it needed to be. The envelope came on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name typed in block letters. The kind of envelope that never carries good news. I opened it at the kitchen sink, the kettle heating behind me. Inside, An IRS notice. Preliminary audit. Flag discrepancies. Prior year filings under review. A short, cold line at the bottom. Failure to respond may result in temporary forfeiture of nonprofit status. I read it twice. Folded it. Set it on the counter. Poured my tea. The water hissed like it knew. They had filed under my name. Back when Michael and Sarah locked me out. Expense reports. Payroll. Contractors. All under my ID. All bearing a name they didn't earn. I didn't cry. Didn't panic. I carried the tea to Frank's old desk. Set the letter on top of the stack of contracts, agreements, minutes. Added a new folder. Labeled it. Audit 2023 Unauthorized Activity. At noon I called Mr. Carter. He wasn't surprised. I've been waiting for this. Honestly, I'm shocked it took this long. Can we fight it? We can, he said. But we'll need everything. Every receipt. Every transaction. Proof they acted outside their authority. He paused. Martha, this could get ugly. I smiled into the phone. It already is. That afternoon I went to the shelter. Golden light filtered through the trees, soft at the edges. Lily met me at the back gate, clipboard in hand. We're low on soft chews, she said. But the vet sent samples. I handed her the letter. She read it, jaw tightening. Do they know what they're waking up? They'll find out. We spent the rest of the day digging. Charlotte printed archive screenshots of donation pages. Gus climbed into storage and found a shoebox full of handwritten expense logs from before things went digital. Everyone who ever loved this place showed up. Not for revenge. For protection. The next morning, I was at the city clerk's office before it opened. Requested every zoning, nonprofit and tax document filed in the past 5 years. Some were clean. Some weren't. Michael had filed expense reports for consulting, a shell company likely tied to AP. Oh. Box I didn't know. Sarah's name was on 5 shelter credit card statements. Close, a resort stay marked conference. All of it under our banner. My name. That night, I stacked it on the dining room table beside Frank's photo. Stared. Then sat and wrote a letter of my own. Meticulous. Every date. Every receipt. Every discrepancy. By midnight it was sealed and ready. The audit wasn't an attack. It was an opening. A chance to separate their recklessness from my name. A chance to rebuild not just walls and kennels but trust. By week's end, Mr. Carter filed our full response. 2 days later, confirmation came. The audit paused. No penalties. No shutdown. Just silence. The good kind. Relief didn't crash like a wave. It settled still and steady. That evening, I went back to the shelter. The sun angled through the windows. Midge was asleep, belly rising and falling. I leaned on the wall and whispered, "We're not going anywhere." And I meant it. We hadn't planned a celebration. No budget. No time. Rosa said wait until the audit was behind us. Gus grumbled about jinxes. Charlotte ignored them both and posted an invite. Homecoming day. This Saturday. No speeches. Just dogs, coffee, and the people who made this place real. The post spread fast. That morning, the shelter looked nothing like it had a year before. No stiff policies taped to walls. No locked closets. No thin blankets. Instead, faded banners from old adoption days lined the fence. Mismatched chairs filled the yard, borrowed from neighbors and churches. Someone brought donuts. Someone else lemonade. The first volunteer arrived at 7:20. By 9 the lot was full. I stood at the door with a clipboard I didn't need, watching people stream in. Some brought photos of dogs they'd adopted. Others carried leashes just in case. Children ran between kennels laughing. Old couples strolled the paths. One man, grease under his nails, circled 3 times before sitting cross-legged beside a brindle mutt with one ear bent sideways. He didn't speak, just held out his palm. The dog crept closer. That was enough. Inside, the staff moved like they'd never left. Lily handing out treats and towels. Charlotte snapping photos, laughing. Someone put on Motown. For a moment it felt like time bent backward. Like Frank might walk through the door with his clipboard and say, "Looks like a good crowd today." I didn't cry. I didn't even tear up. But I stood still, taking it all in. And I felt something move through me I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the fragile kind. The real kind. Not the kind of peace you get from pretending nothing's broken. The kind that comes only after you stand your ground. At noon we served soup and sandwiches from a local diner that used to sponsor us. Back before Michael cut off non-essential community partnerships. They refused payment, just sent over 2 steaming pots and a handwritten card that read, "Welcome back, Mrs. Hale." No speeches. None were needed. People spoke in presence, in laughter, in the way they leaned over kennels and whispered names. Later that afternoon, I sat on the back bench outside the intake wing, a lukewarm coffee in my hand. My knees ached, my back reminded me I'd been on my feet since dawn. But I wasn't tired. Charlotte dropped beside me, waving her phone. 30 adoption inquiries today. 13 confirmed follow-ups. And the mayor's office just messaged, they want to feature us in the city newsletter. I raised an eyebrow. We still don't have heat in the back wing. Doesn't matter, she grinned. They love a comeback story. She was right. We hadn't rebuilt this place with money. We rebuilt it with memory, with grit, with love poured back into every corner where it had once been drained. At sunset, people began to leave. Some waved. Some hugged. One woman pressed a crumpled 20 into my hand and whispered, "It's not much, but thank you." I made one last round before locking up. Dogs fed. Trash bins full of paper plates. Chairs stacked neatly without being asked. The kind of day that didn't demand recognition. Just existed, and that was miracle enough. When I turned off the porch light, I glanced back at the sign above the gate. Faded letters. Peeling paint. I didn't want to repaint it. I wanted it exactly that way. A little worn. A little bent. Still standing. Like me. The audit closed on a Thursday. No fanfare, no call. Just a thick certified envelope handed over by a postal worker who looked like he expected to ruin my day. He didn't. I opened it steady. 3 pages clipped together. Summary of findings, formal exoneration, and a note from the examiner, typed but human. Thank you for your clarity and cooperation. Your stewardship of the shelter, both past and present, reflects a commitment we rarely see sustained across decades. Please consider this matter closed. I read it twice. Smoothed the page with my hand. Sat still. Not from shock, not even from relief, but from something deeper. The release of a breath I'd been holding for years. I poured a small glass of Frank's old scotch. Wiped the dust from the cap. He saved it for birthdays. I was saving it for this. I raised it toward his photo on the mantel. "We did it," I whispered. "Quiet, steady, right? Just the way you taught me." One slow sip. That was enough. The next morning, I carried the letter to the shelter and slipped a copy into the admin binder. Lily read it silently, then placed her hand over mine. "No one else would have held on," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. News spread fast. By afternoon, a young reporter from the local paper called. She wanted an interview for a feature on community resilience. "A lot of people think what you did here is remarkable," she said. "I didn't do it alone," I told her. "But you were the first," she insisted. I agreed, but under one condition. No dramatics. No headlines about cages or betrayal. Just the facts. Just what it means to protect something because it's right, not because it's profitable. She agreed. That weekend, donations ticked upward. Small bills, coins, notes scribbled in shaky handwriting. For Midge. For whoever's next. For you. I pinned one to the bulletin board in the back office. By Sunday, Lily had turned the storage room into a real intake suite. Fresh towels, a better scale, a heating pad for seniors. Gus fixed the sagging fence. Charlotte lined up a visit with a local 5th grade class. The shelter had rhythm now. Breath. People kept asking if I'd retire again. "Let someone else lead," one board member said gently. "You've done enough." Maybe I had. But something unfinished lingered inside me. Not resentment. Not pride. Just a quiet knowing. I'd step aside when the last stitch was sewn, the last box closed. That moment hadn't come. Then just before closing on Monday, Emma came back. The little girl with the pink backpack and the quiet smile. Her mother walked beside her, holding a leash. Midge trotted proudly at their side, tail high, face shining. "We wanted to say thank you," her mother said softly. Emma held out something small. A crayon drawing on thick paper. Midge, crooked ears and all, beside a red-roofed house and a garden of blue flowers. At the bottom in blocky letters, Miss Martha's dogs find homes. I swallowed hard. You remembered. Emma nodded. You helped her remember how to be good. I bent slowly, my knees popping, and hugged her gently. Not long. Just enough. When they left, Midge looked back once. I waved. That night, I sat by the front gate with Emma's drawing in my lap. The porch light buzzing. The air thick with late summer hum. The shelter was safe. The name was mine again. The damage undone, or at least brought into the light. And still part of me stayed watchful. Not bitter. Not afraid. Just awake. Because no one tells you that after the fire, after the clawing and the proving and the winning, what you're left with isn't pride. It's stewardship. And I wasn't done carrying that yet. I gave Lily the keys on a Tuesday. No ceremony. No speeches. Just in the intake room while she filled out a form for a 3-legged collie. You're early, she said, looking up. I held out the brass keyring, the original one. Her eyes widened. Are you sure? I nodded. It's time. She didn't argue. That's why I chose her. Steady. Reliable. The kind who doesn't need to prove anything because she already lives it. You're not leaving though, she said carefully. I'll still be here. Just not at that desk. Not in that chair. Not signing every invoice. She hesitated and I added, I already failed once by stepping back and not watching closely enough. I won't make that mistake again. She nodded slowly. Watching is different from clinging. You're not the clinging type. No, I said. But I am the remembering type. That afternoon, I walked the shelter one last time as director. Dogs quiet, fed, calm. Rooms clean. Staff smiling. A group of school kids crouched in the visitation area, sketching their favorite dogs. One boy drew Midge with a cape. She didn't mind. She loved the dramatic ones. Out back, Charlotte's vegetable patch was sprouting. Tomatoes, peppers, basil. Enrichment for the dogs, snacks for us. Signs of life everywhere. Not just survival. Life. And in that I found my answer. It didn't need me to hold every part anymore. I had brought it back to breath. Now someone else could teach it to sing. That night, I went home and packed away the last of Frank's files. Not because they didn't matter, but because they'd served their time. I tied the box with twine, labeled it, and slid it onto the shelf. Then I lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, and opened the window. The wind moved through the trees, brushing past the curtains. Not urgent. Just present. Like Frank, maybe. Or maybe just time. Before bed, I opened Emma's drawing again. Miss Martha's dogs find homes. Not true anymore. They'd found theirs. Now it was someone else's turn to keep the door open. And maybe, if you're reading this wondering whether it's worth fighting back, whether dignity can be reclaimed, whether kindness can be louder than cruelty, maybe it's yours. So take this as your sign. Go back. Fix what they said was broken. Say what they told you not to bother saying. Stand where they tried to erase you. Because they were wrong. And you're not done yet. Like I told Midge once with my hand pressed to the cold steel gate. We're home. Now it's your turn to keep the lights on. If this story means something to you, share it. Leave a comment. Remind someone else they're not alone.